Hi guys, it's Angela. Welcome back to my channel, Literature Science Alliance. And today I want to talk about my favorite books that are not fantasy. And it was really fun making this list. And I also learned that joining a book club to get outside of my comfort zone was a really good idea because a lot of these books I wouldn't have read without this book club because once a month we pick a book, and it's normally a genre I don't read a lot, like historical fiction or nonfiction, and I've found a lot of them on my list, and also a fair bit of science fiction and things like that. But I just wanted to talk about a few books so that you had a sense of what I liked besides epic high fantasy. So let's just get into it. My first one's Pachinko by Minjin Lee, I think is how you say it. And the best way to describe this story is you're following three generations, I think four technically, of this Korean family in the 20th century. In this time, Japan invades Korea. You have World War I and II. And so not only do you have these large historical events, you get to learn about the relationship between Korea and Japan and really get an understanding of why it is the way it is today. And these were all things I didn't know because I didn't learn about them in depth in my history classes, and I found it fascinating. But on top of that, it wasn't it was the writing style for me too. That's what makes it a favorite, not just a this was cool. Like I was immersed. I was so captivated by these characters. I wanted to know what was happening next. Like I think in the beginning there's kind of this love story, and I was there. I wanted to know what happened. So it was captivating. It enriched my life. I Whenever someone has it on their shelf and they haven't read it yet, I'm like, you have to read Pachinko. It's so good. And they're weirded out because I'm the girl that gives everyone a Mistborn book for Christmas. So, yeah, Pachinko. If you at all are curious about anything I just said and like really good prose, I would pick this one up. It Don't be daunted by its page length. It really reads so fast. Like we only give ourselves a month to do these book clubs, and I read it back then. I wasn't even reading very fast, so I think it was just 2 weeks, which was really fast for me 4 years ago. So yeah, Pachinko. And then this is another one. I don't think I ever say it right, but I'm going to say LaRose, but it could be LaRose. And this is by Louise Edrich. And I liked this book so much, I picked up another one of hers I read last year, which I also liked, but not as much. And she does a lot of work incorporating Native American history and present day culture into her works. And this one specifically, we're looking at North Dakota area where you have a reservation and an American community side by side. And you have these two families, and we open up. This is not a spoiler, it's on the back of the book. But a man is out hunting and he accidentally kills the 5-year-old son of his neighbor. His neighbor, also the wife of this household, is the half sister to his wife. So not only are they neighbors, they are familial. But this neighbor lives in the American land and he's on the reservation. But to atone, they give their son LaRose to this family and saying he is your son now. Now, again, much like Pachinko, I heard this and I was like, all right, it's our book club book. I'll read it. And I don't know why. I don't think everyone feels this way, but I want to reread it. I liked it a lot. Again, it's another one of those where there's no huge plot. You're just following these families processing grief, but also living their daily life. It takes place in 1999, so that's kind of cool to get to see pre 9/11, and then it goes into 9/11 a tiny bit, I think. It's been a few years. But I really liked exploring this. Oh, my cat has shown up. This is Delilah. But I really enjoyed exploring modern day reservations and this interesting life. So I would really recommend picking up LaRose, or yeah, LaRose. I really don't know how to pronounce it. If any of that sounded interesting, I want to read it again, and I can't really pinpoint why. And I like her writing style a lot because I did pick up another book by her and I enjoyed it. And that one was more dystopian, like kind of almost Handmaid's Tale-esque, you know? So that's LaRose. The next book I want to talk about is by Frederick Bachman, and that is My Grandmother Asked Me to Tell You She's Sorry. And this one, I don't, it's about a girl whose grandmother passes away and how she handles that grief, but also she was remembering these stories that her grandmother would tell her at night, these fantastical stories. And you, as the reader, start to see how these stories relate to her real life. So that adds this level of mystery and intrigue, but also it's this family and this girl going through grief. And this is like the book that like kind of got me more into like, I don't know, wanting to review books because I had a lot to think about when I finished it. And it is a book I still want to read again. I thought it was a really interesting, I don't know, I loved the girl and I loved her grandma. So this one I think is a very character driven pick for me because she's just such a bright, crazy little child. And she is an insane, like, Golden Girls level grandma. And I thought it was really interesting. I actually gave it to my grandma. I think she thought it was a little weird, but still, I thought it was a really good book. And next one. This one was one I was probably going to read anyways, but I introduced it to my book club because I was like, you guys need to read some science fiction or something else. We need to expand your horizons. And that is Kindred by Octavia Butler. And she was an author I was always interested in reading because she, like, for African Americans and women, is a very important author. And so we read Kindred, which is about this modern African American woman who in present day, whenever that is inexplicably sent back in time to the antebellum South during slavery, which is not a great time to be Black. And at first she's only sent back for a little bit of time, but each time her stay is longer and she never knows when it'll end or why it's happening. And the book does one of my favorite but could be least favorite things of starting off at the end. And you read that first chapter and you're like, well, I guess I can't put this book down now. I need to know what happens. And it's like reading a Black Mirror episode almost. It was really fast-paced and amazing, and I really enjoyed that experience. The next one is a nonfiction, and I thought about putting two nonfictions on the list, but really I liked them both for the same reason, and I like this one more. And this is Evicted by Matthew Desmond. And this is a book I hate to like because it's nonfiction. Like, these stories are captivating and sad and full of drama, and I was so immersed and engaged and had to keep reminding myself these are real people. These are people living in poverty who keep getting evicted, and this is in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, I think. And the author lived with these people. So all the people in the book he had lived with for a time or another to get their story. He did this for a few years, I think. And he goes to almost all the neighborhoods and follows their life. And you learn a lot. You learn a lot you don't want to know, but it's given to you in a palatable way in the sense that it's not like you're not in a sociology class, but you're learning about the sociology of your community. And I'm better for reading this book. It's another book that whenever I'm at a bookstore with a friend, I'm like, you should read this. And it's one I give to people occasionally, and I think more people should read it. We should be more informed about how everyone lives. So not only is the writing impeccable and makes you feel guilty, but it's also informative. So yeah, that is Evicted. Now this one, I did not put on my fantasy list because I don't like it because it's a fantasy and it's technically young adult fantasy, so I guess I played with the rules and just didn't put it on my adult fantasy list. And that is A Court of Mist and Fury by Sarah J. Maas. And this is a book that I call a guilty pleasure, but that's why I like it. I am pleased by it. I love the romance. I love following these characters, going through their trauma. I love the quick nature of it. I love that it's a book that makes me stay up till 3 a.m. reading it. Sometimes you want a book that does that for you. And for me, this is my YA romance book. Not even the whole series. It's really this one. The other two I read because I'm completing the story arc, but this is the book that keeps me up at night that I can't put down. So yeah, Court of Mist and Fury. Now you'll notice I don't own a lot of these because for book club I typically, if I have to own it, I get the Kindle, but I normally get the library book because I don't know if I'll like them till after I read them, but if I've already bought them, I don't want to buy them. And I typically give them away as gifts more often than buy them for myself. But this one I own, and that is The Fall of Hyperion. And I'm trying to get this glare not to work. By Dan Simmons. And look at that beautiful 80s art. So captivating. It just makes you want to read it, doesn't it? But real talk, it is very good. It's actually part of this duology. I guess there's technically 4 books, but I like to think of it as a duology because I read all 4 and these 2 are the best. So Hyperion and The Fall of Hyperion. It's really hard to do this in mirror, but yeah. And I really like this one. The first one is considered a classic, and I agree, and I want to reread it now that I'm better at reading classics or more classic-like things. But the plot really picks up in The Fall of Hyperion. So Hyperion, it's about this this group of people who are going on a pilgrimage to this pyramid where the Shrike is. And I've read the books. I still don't quite know what the Shrike is. I think it's kind of explained, but it's not. You don't get spoon-fed in this duology. So they're on this pilgrimage, and the universe is not. Civilization is ending. I don't think the universe is ending, but civilization around them is ending. So they're going on this pilgrimage while big things are happening in the world. And the Fall of Hyperion is when everything concludes, and it concludes so satisfying, and it's so like all these threads that are set up in the first book come together, and I just get really pleased when a conclusion's satisfying, and that's what this does. And this is something I've enjoyed owning, and it's really something I'm going to reread because I want to explore it again. So if I want to reread you when there's hundreds of new books out there, you have to be one of my favorites. I was not pleased with Endymion and Rise of Endymion, which are the other 2. I mean, I will read them again, but I like to think of them as their own thing because it kind of retcons stuff that I really loved in these 2, and I just want to ignore when people retcon things they ought not to. So yeah, that's The Fall of Hyperion. And the last book I want to mention is Red Rising, which is the first, and I think it's just called the Red Rising trilogy. And this is by Pierce Brown. And what can I say? I thought it would be like one of those young adult Hunger Game things, He goes to an academy, this main character, to kind of infiltrate. There's this color system, which is very similar to other dystopian books, caste systems. But it's like that, but it's not. It pulls from a lot of really good fantasy archetypes. Oh, she's back. And it pulls from a lot of things I like in classical sci-fi and in modern fantasy. And I really love the characters, and I love that I really don't know what's going to happen next. I'm like, what are you doing? All right. Is this going to work? And I liked the reveal. There are lots of reveals, and those are really fun. And the first, I think, is my favorite. Although I've enjoyed the whole journey so far, except for... So the first arc's 3 books, and it has a complete ending. And then they've started to release new books. And I've read those, and they're much longer, but also about much less. And I'm reserving final judgment for when they're all out, but this last book really left like a sour taste in my mouth, personally. But the original trilogy was really enjoyable. It's really fast-paced, so if you're like on a vacation and you need an airport book, it's great for that. So that's why I like that one. So these are just some of my top fictions, well, I guess, and not fictions, my top books that are not fantasy. So I hope you enjoyed this. Hope you enjoyed seeing my cat. And if you liked this and want to hear more of my thoughts on books, hit subscribe. And if you have any of your books you want to chime in about, feel free to leave them in the comments. I don't care what genre they are. I just love learning about books people recommend because life's too short to pick up a bad book, in my opinion. So, yeah, have a great day. Bye.